Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Caregiver Cup podcast. It's Kathy here, and thank you for listening. If you are a caregiver, you are in the right spot. Or if you have family members caregiving, you're in the right spot as well. Today, we are digging into waiting rooms and those long days that you spend at the clinic with your loved one. It could be in the doctor's office, the hospital, chemotherapy, physical therapy, whatever it would be, but you know you're in for a long day. I feel like I feel like I should get paid for all the time that I've spent in the waiting rooms over the last 5.5 years. And my longest stint or my longest time that I've ever spent in waiting rooms from a day's perspective are 28 straight days when my husband went through his transplant of his bone marrow, and they took his bone marrow out and the cells out of his bone marrow and transplanted those back in. And he had a stem cell transplant back in 2022. And so the days were very long. We started at 7-ish a.m. in the morning, and there were days where we didn't get home until dinner time or 5 p.m., 5:30 as well. And I think the biggest thing for me is, why do you feel so tired? And as my mom would say, why do you feel like a dirty dish rag or a wet noodle when you're sitting all day? And when you're sitting all day, you think about it's stressful, it's exhausting, it can be frustrating depending on your situation or your weight. And then it's downright boring sometimes. And I think that gets the best of you. So, in today's episode of the Caregiver Cup podcast, I want to talk about how you can survive those days or how you're surviving those long days and what you can bring or what you can do to combat that boredom or what you can do to go ahead and boost your energy, because I feel like it sucks all the energy out of you. And so I have to admit, that I hate, and I better soften it a little bit, but I dislike waiting rooms. I think because I've been in so many, and I know it's necessary to go ahead and wait, but the experience isn't always good. You think about it. When you're in a waiting room, what do you see? You see sick people, anxious people, frustration. It's grim. It's not usually a fun experience. I would probably weigh it as close to going to the DMV, and now we don't have to as much be in a government waiting room anymore, but that's kind of the same. And the chairs usually are not comfortable, usually are tight together, and you're row by row by row with other people. If you're lucky, once in a while, you'll get a comfy chair in a waiting room. Or when we were at Freighter Hospital in Milwaukee, in one of the cancer clinics, there was an actual kind of a cubby hole kind of place that overlooked the windows, and they had rocking chairs, and I'm like, they were always busy, but once in a while we would get a glider or a rocker, and we could look out over the view over the they had a pond and stuff over there, and it's like, that's the waiting room that I would love to be in all the time. If you're lucky, maybe there's a TV and it's playing something interesting, but most of the time people are on their phones or they're patiently waiting, and then don't ever have it at a room temperature that's comfortable for you. It's either freezing cold or it's too warm, and so it's temperatures vary. And then with the pandemic happening and all of that happening, we're all worried about the germs. And you hear somebody coughing. I was in a situation where we were waiting for, I think Dennis had one of his surgeries, And there was a gentleman there that was sneezing and coughing, and he had to take off his mask all the time, and he was blowing his nose, and I'm thinking, "We're in a hospital where people are sick, and if I had a cold and I could not, control that, I would go ahead and tell the front desk that, hey, tell my loved one that I'm going to be waiting out in the car or doing something because it was like ridiculous. So you're paranoid for germs. Now, the surgery waiting rooms, you might have a monitor that you're watching your loved one's your number and you're seeing where they are in the process. You might have a beeper. I've had a beeper where you're like at Olive Garden and you're waiting for your table and all of a sudden the bzzz goes off. I've had that before. I've had the phone apps, which are wonderful, and you can go ahead and check the progress on the phone app and then be able to go ahead and tell where they're in the process. I've even been to waiting rooms where it was called the day clinic, and next to the front desk there was a almost like a food station or a coffee station where they had high bar tables, and then there were some vending machines, and they were healthy vending machines, so you can sit and wait in there, especially if you're the caregiver. I thought that was really cool too. But my pet peeve is this: not all of the restrooms are in decent places. I've gone to a few where the restrooms, you're waiting in rows and the waiting room, and then there's a restroom right across from a row of chairs. So whoever goes into the bathroom, you can see underneath the door, you can see who's in there, you can hear them peeing. I'm going to be blunt. You can hear them peeing, you can hear them blowing their nose, washing their hands, whatever it would be, and you walk out and everybody's looking at you. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what a weird situation." I've gone to a few of those. And then I don't know about you, but the smells of a waiting room or a clinic or a facility just drive me crazy. And then let's go on top of it. Kathy's really being a downer here, but I promise I'll turn this into something positive here. The long waits. Why is it? Why is it that I just made an appointment for my physical, right? And my physical is for 3:30. Why is it that they say you have to arrive at 3 o'clock or 3:10? Why is that? I know that you have to check in, but it never takes that long to check in. It's like 5 minutes max. It never takes that long. And then you go up to the waiting room and you wait, and then you go beyond your time. And so it's just so frustrating. And then if I brought my mom along, she would want to go ahead and if they said you have to be there at 3 and your appointment's at 3:30, she'd want to be there at 2:30 just to make sure, man, they might run ahead of time. And so the wait is long. And so you see people frustrated. They're waiting so long and they're not feeling well. And like I said, some waiting rooms have windows. Thank goodness. Some waiting rooms that feel so dark and dreary, and you have no idea what's happening in the outside world. Some have really comfortable chairs. My brother always wanted to take my mom to her dentist because at the dental office there were massage chairs on one side of the room. And he would be like, I'm taking mom while she goes and gets her teeth clean. I'm going to sit for 30 minutes in the massage chair and be done with it. So it was really cool that they had that and they were good. Uh, then you see people that were so sitting there alone and you kind of wonder what's their story. What's their story? And then you see others with their sibling with them or their spouse with them or you know, uh, another person with them, and then you see some with an interpreter next to them because they don't speak English, or you see a loved one with multiple people and it looks like the family and you knew it's something serious that they're all together. So it's just interesting. It's interesting. And in my notes here, I had said, then, after you wait for that, you come in and you're on time and you're waiting to go head into the doctor's room. Then you're in this 8 by 8, 10 by 10 little cubicle room, and you're like, okay, can I hear anybody outside the door? Because not only did I wait 30 minutes out in the waiting room, the major waiting room, now I'm in this little tiny room. Nurse says everything's ready and the doctor will be with you in just a few minutes, and you're waiting 30 more minutes. Dennis and I, my husband and I, would have little bets to say, okay, how long is it going to take for the doctor to come into the room? And at Freighter, our doctor was never, ever on time. And sometimes it was 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour to wait. And then Kathy gets mad. And I go out and it's like, okay, is the doctor gonna come pretty soon? Or I mean, it's been an hour long wait in this room that we've now waited. And sometimes you have to push them along a little bit as well. Um, so I want to talk about too, like if you're in a surgery waiting room, you're lucky if you get to the recovery room and there's a little lazy boy next to you, and you're like, yes. Or for me, when Dennis was taking his chemotherapy, they didn't have rooms. You were separated 10 feet apart, and there was curtains you could pull if you wanted to. And there was always just an uncomfortable chair that I sat next to. But I got to learn and got to know a lot of the volunteers, and they eventually would bring me a little table, like a side table that I could put my drinks on, eat my lunch off of, or work on my laptop. And so it just pays to go ahead and talk to people as well. So the next thing I want to talk about here is, what do you bring with you when you are in a long day? I learned right away in the very first appointments that having just your phone in your purse is not enough. You have to go ahead and occupy yourself, because sometimes my husband's chemotherapy appointments, he would go from lab to the doctor. The doctor approved the prescription or the chemotherapy. We had to wait for the pharmacy to bring it up. He had to go to his chemotherapy chair and wait. And that would be like an hour and a half. And then his chemotherapy would be like 4 or 5 hours long. And so that would be a huge long day. And so what do? You can't just fiddle your thumbs. And so what I did is I started with a grab and go bag. I know I'm going to make some noise here once, but I had a bag that I had. This is so old. It's an old 31 bag, but it had pockets inside and out. And that was my grab and go bag. And in my grab and go bag, I had just a list of things that I brought with me. And most of it just stayed in the bag, or I would refill the bag, but like your phone, a charger, and then some battery pack chargers, because if you're there for a long period of time and can't find a plug-in, you rely on the battery packs. You need some earphones or headphones or something, so that if you want to listen to music or watch a movie or whatever, you have it. I brought my journal, extra pens with me so I could journal every day. Dennis had his gear too. My husband had his gear where he would bring his iPad, um, and then I also had my notepad for Dennis. I also had one for my mom. I would grab one of those. So I had the advocacy. I could do my advocacy work or ask questions. When Dennis was going through a stem cell transplant, we had a big binder that we were expected to bring along, because they would give us new information to put in the binder. There would be occasions where I'd bring my laptop along so I could go ahead and do my work or take a conference call if I needed it. I would bring just an empty water bottle before the pandemic, and then just find places to fill it because it was so heavy. And most of the time, if you had it empty, even after the pandemic, the nurses had a nursing station, or there were somewhere you could go ahead and get ice and water. I would always have my thermos of coffee, not just a typical one, Yeti with it. I had a thermos so that I had enough all morning long. So here's Kathy walking with her bag and an old fashioned thermos that I brought along with me so I could have that. So you got to have the comforts of whatever you need, whatever you drink, whatever you need. And then I brought snacks that were healthy and that I knew that didn't need to be heated or cooled. So I like a piece of fruit, a banana or an apple or something, and a granola bar, almonds for the afternoon or something like that. And then in the bag, I also had just in case stuff. You know how sometimes you just like you need something? So always put them in a bag like this, like just in case. I was I when I get nervous, I pick my cuticles and I pick my nails and never fails. I'll pick something and I'll have a bloody nail. And so I had a band-aid along, things to clean my glasses, tissue, lip balm, feminine napkins, nail clippers, nail files, hand sanitizer, lotions, and extra masks because I hate the sweaty feeling of having a mask on. And so I had 4 of them, and I would just rotate every hour. I'd put on a fresh one that felt better on, and as I thought of things, I would put them in my bag, and because there's nothing worse than, like, clipping your nail or having a broken nail, and then you pick at it all day long. So one of the big things that I learned really fast because the temperatures are so different in the rooms was to have a scarf. And I would bring a scarf along and throw it in the bag, but the scarf was a nice big one so that you could wrap it around your neck and be cold, or you could wrap it around your shoulders or whatever. It can be used in multiple places. So don't forget your over the counter meds, like if you need a Tylenol and you got a headache or cough drop or Tums, whatever you use, or if you have a prescription that you need to take at a certain time, you want to bring those along as well. So those are just a few things that I thought about. But what do you put in your bag? Because this bag here would just hang on the back of my door, and the night before or the morning of, I would just go ahead and check it all, make sure I have enough Kleenex in my bag, make sure I have everything that I need, and then I would just take it and grab and go. And when we were in the stem cell transplant process, those 28 straight days, when I got back, I grabbed the chargers, plugged them in if I used them. I would go ahead and refill some things. And so it was just easy grab and go and being able to do that. Now, with food, you could always go to the cafeteria or find a vending machine. But during Dennis's stem cell transplant, we had to watch what he ate. He could not have anything that potentially had bacteria potentials. Like he couldn't have deli meat, he couldn't have mayonnaise, he couldn't have raw fruit because of the peelings on the outside potentially could have pesticides or whatever bacteria on it. And so everything had to be canned or cooked or whatever. And so what we would do every single morning, or I would do every single morning, I would make my green spinach shake, which I really, really loved. And it brought me extra nutrition. If you want to know that recipe, let me know. But I would make that, throw it in the freezer because I could drink that at the clinic, and it would thaw out and it would be nice and cold. I put it in the freezer while I took my shower, and then after my shower, I went out and made our lunches, and I made sandwiches or if he needed comfort food or whatever it would be, because he at some points he couldn't even eat it. So I would bring crackers and pudding and jellos and just stuff like that for comfort food. Extra drinks, certain drinks that he could have, like Gatorade and stuff, was really important. I needed my yogurt with my blueberries and my almonds in it. I'm so habitual, and I packed that in a cooler, but I didn't drag that in every day because it's so heavy. I left that in the car with the understanding that it got me up and it got me away midway through the day, and I could go for a walk to pick it up. I could bring back any of my coffee that I finished or anything that I didn't need anymore. I could go ahead and leave that in the car. So it was really good. Um, so um, I also thought about on the way home. And when your loved one has to be home, let's say they're having a surgery or they went through chemotherapy or huge physical therapy, sometimes they're not feeling well. And so, what can you do to help your loved one? I know when I brought my mom home from, uh, from her like her surgeries, any type of surgery, she's always cold. So I made sure I had a blanket in the car. I made sure I had one of those eye masks because sometimes when they get done with surgery, they don't feel good. So they could put the eye mask over and avoid all the sun and the blockage there. I even thought about, do they want a specific drink in the car? My mom was a Coca-Cola person, and so she always wanted a fresh glass of Coke when she got in the car so that she could just kind of wake up a little bit, whatever it would be, whatever you think they may need. And I never forgot like the vomit bag or something like that, so that just in case they would get sick, having a plastic bag or one of those emesis bags or whatever it would be. So those are things that you kind of just prepare in advance and have in the back of your mind. Now, also for you, when you're in those long days, I first of all didn't even think about, what to wear. I wanted to look good. And so it would be like I would wear a nicer blouse and, a nicer pair of jeans and, some dress up shoes once in a while. But I learned really fast you dress for comfort. You dress and you want comfort. And you never know what the temperature is going to be. It could be 90 degrees outside and it could be 65 in the clinic. And so the biggest thing for me is to layer up. And I learned to layer up like a t-shirt and a sweatshirt. Like I'm wearing a sweatshirt, I would put like maybe a tank top underneath here so that I would have it. If it got really hot, I could take the sweatshirt off or a sweater and a t-shirt, whatever. And then I'm not comfortable in jeans. I'll have to admit, jeans drive me crazy because they're not comfortable and so I learned to be, that's why I think why I am a yoga pants lady or a leggings lady. And I know that in the wintertime, they have fleece ones. And so I would do that. Now in the summertime, I would pack socks along because I'd wear flip-flops there or a nice pair of sandals. And then I'd get inside and I'd be freezing sitting there. And so I would like look in my bag and I'm like, I have socks in there. Yep, I had socks in there from that. I used my scarf a lot. I brought a fleece along in the summertime, even if you didn't need anything, and brought that in. There were times where I brought a blanket in because I knew the facility. So you want to look somewhat good, but you want to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable and relaxed because you're sitting there all day long as well. Another thing to kind of combat or fight off that fatigue and the energy sucker, for lack of a term, that the waiting rooms and the being there all day does to you, is try to think about moving because the next day you're like, why is my back so sore? Or uh, why am I so tired when I get home and don't feel like making dinner? And I sat all day, but it's boredom and sitting there, but like I talked about earlier, it's the stress and everything else. So look for ways to get up and move. Look for ways to go ahead and try to move. It's wonderful to have an Apple Watch that's just telling me right now to get up and move. It's just telling me that right now to get up and move. That could be your ticket there. You want to be able to go ahead and think about it. Can I move during my bathroom break? You can tell your loved one, I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the restroom and then take a walk around or go stand by the window and look out the window, whatever it would be. You can always ask the nurse saying, when's a good time for me to take a break? And I want to go ahead and get up and move around a little bit. They're going to help you. Like I said, go to your car get your cooler or get your lunch. Think about when my husband got through the chemotherapy, and he went through like 4 times, 4 rounds of long chemotherapies over about a 4 year span. We knew that first day was going to be labs and the doctors and prescribing the chemotherapy, getting in the chemotherapy chair and getting everything hooked up. After that, it was going to be a long time. And once he got hooked up into the chair, that was my ticket to say, I'm walk around. And when it was cold outside, I'd walk around the hospital and go each floor and walk around and just move my body. I even would go ahead and snoop in the gift shop or whatever. You can go to the chapel and say a prayer. And then when the weather was nice, you can figure out, is there a place to walk around the building or walking trails or whatever. And it just boosts your mood and your energy to get fresh air and sun in your face and soaking it in. I also did when the one of his chemotherapies were around the holidays and Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving week. I was so stressed, so overwhelmed, thinking I have family over. I have to prep the meal. I got to get groceries. I have all of these. I have to clean the house. And I said to him, I'm like, once you get in your chair, I'm going to go ahead and get groceries. Are you okay with that? The next day, I went ahead and cleaned my house. The next day, I went ahead and got the last minute errands and I took a nap. What's nice about it is you can talk to the nurse, you can talk to your loved one. You know if your loved one is okay with that. And for me, my spouse was. Now, my mom wouldn't be okay with that, but she would be okay if I walked around and did some things. Um, but think about other things. You can fill your water. What's nice too is you can take a call or go for a walk. Or if things are really tough and stressful, or you just got bad news, I've had to walk outside of the room and go for a walk and talk to a friend or talk to my son, or just put my earbuds on and find a corner and cry a little bit in a quiet space and then come back when you had your composure. You need it for your physical well-being, but your mental well-being as well. And so that's so important. So try to get creative, and in trying to do things is an important piece for that. Okay, let's move into the next piece about filling your time. It's been really fun watching people in the waiting rooms that are trying to fill their time. Oh my gosh, I saw some beautiful hats that were knit and crocheted blankets, or I don't know if it's knitting and crocheting, so I'm sorry if I'm messing those up, but beautiful scarves being made. I'm thinking, that's probably something to keep them busy, and it probably keeps their mind off of things as well. Lots of reading. I've done lots of reading. Journaling. When Dennis was in his weeks and weeks of the process, I journaled everything. I wrote down everything, my thoughts, my feelings, what was going on, how I missed my fur babies, whatever it would be. I wrote my podcast episodes, I wrote emails. And then when you get to the point where you're brain dead, you always have your phone that you can go ahead and play games, or you can upload a movie. There's nothing worse than they say, oh, you have 3 hours left. And you're like, oh my God, 3 more hours. And so that's the point where if you run out of things to do, a movie might be best if you can do that. I've taken Zoom calls, work sometimes, but I really loved coloring. I really loved adult coloring, and I bought myself some colored pencils and sharpener, and I would waste about an hour of just getting lost in coloring and doing that. Once too, when we were doing those 28 days straight, and they were Saturdays and Sundays, I would say to Dennis, I'm like, "Do you wanna FaceTime the kids? Do we wanna FaceTime my mom? Do you wanna FaceTime friends?" Talk about a break. It gives you a little bit of a break, and they can tell you what's going on, and so that's kind of nice too. So you kinda gotta get creative with that too. The last thing that I wanna talk about with you is probably the one that's the most avoided or controversial or not, people are not receptive to it, but I want to ask you the question is, do you need to be with your loved one at that clinic all day long for the whole time? If you're dealing with somebody maybe that has dementia or an elderly parent or something like that, maybe yes, but most of the time you can find time for yourself. If they're going through physical therapy or chemotherapy, or they were going ahead, and when Dennis was in through his 28 days, then he went in for these daily checks, which required him to go to right up to the bone marrow transplant room. He had his own assigned room. They would take his labs, the nurse would take his stats, and then they would wait for the doctor, and then they would tell them what he lacked, and then he would have to get platelets or fluid or vitamins or whatever it would be, and then once that was done, he could go home. And sometimes it was an hour, sometimes it was 3 hours, and I asked him, I said, "Are you okay if I go ahead and give you the rock star chauffeur for the day," which means that you're feeling great now. You're no longer dizzy or weak or nauseous. You're actually starting to the decline, or going the incline up. And I said, "What if I go ahead and I could keep your car warm, drive you right up to the front door of the clinic? You have to go right up to the elevators, go into your room, and then you get what you need, and then you tell me that you're done. I come right down, pick you up." And we had a system where he could tell me 15 to 20 minutes before, and I'd wait right up, and he would walk right out like he was on the red carpet kind of thing. And what was really nice is we talked to the nurses about this too, and what was really nice is his lab results would be on there on the app that we followed. His stats would be on there. The doctor notes would be on there. And then he would text me when he started whatever treatment he needed. And then he'd tell me that the bag looked like it was about 10 minutes left. Or he would ask the nurse, "Can you kind of give me like a 10-minute warning that it's done so my wife can come and pick you up?" So I felt guilty at first. I felt really guilty at first, but when I look back at it now, it allowed me extra time that I didn't have to get up as early in the morning and clean the room, because the room had to be cleaned every day because he did his transplant outpatient. And so we had to I had to wipe down the rooms. I had to scrub the floors with the mop. I had to clean the bathrooms, wipe down the handles. Everything had to be totally, clean, and try to be as safe as we possibly could. And so I could drop him off now, and I could do that when I got back. And then I could go ahead and get some work done. I could go ahead and get prepped for dinner. I could take a nap if I needed to, that sort of thing. And he really enjoyed it, because then he's like, I didn't have to walk through the ramp. I didn't have to walk through the hallway. I didn't have to do all of that. Oh, now Siri's making a noise for me. So I didn't have to do all of that. So just food for thought. I think there's something there where you need to think about, do you need to be there, or could you go ahead and use that time to get groceries, to go ahead and get his pharmacy prescription or her pharmacy prescription? So now all of it has to be tested. All of it has to be tested, and you want to test it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, you want to have good discussion with your loved one to make sure that they understand that you're not doing it because you are not providing them quality care. You're doing it for your overall well-being, and to go ahead and provide a better caregiver life for both you and them. So To kind of close today, I want to talk about just waiting rooms in general. Waiting rooms and living in clinics all day can really get the best of you. They can be so frustrating, but when you have a personal plan, when you think through what you're going to do all day and try to fill that time, it can feel better, and maybe you'll even enjoy some of the experiences. Maybe you'll find that you're gonna get productive. One, I made appointments and got everything scheduled for my mom while I was with Dennis and got all of that taken care of. It can turn your emotions and your patience and your overall time into just a more enjoyable day. And maybe you'll even find that you have energy after you leave. And so on Monday in my Instagram, I posted this quote, and I think this is perfect for this episode as well. We cannot change the cards we are dealt, just how we play the hand. We cannot change our caregiver life or the situation most of the time, but we can go ahead and adapt and shift and make changes so we can find joy in the little things, or we can go ahead and survive those little things. So, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and it provides you with some insights and little tips, maybe to kind of get your thoughts going. And I'm going to also be this week going back out to the YouTube channel again, and I'm going to actually unpack my grab and go bag for you to see what I all have in the bag so that you just kind of get a visual. But I still have it to this day, and I haven't used this bag, which is wonderful, for a while. But when I look at my calendar now, in next week, I'll be using it. My husband has oral surgery coming up, and so I'll be using it a couple more times, but all I know is it's there. And so all I have to do is just check what I have in it and refill and put things in it so that I have what I need and I'm not scrambling. So to end today, though, I wanted to tell you too that I have started a Caregiver Cup podcast online community, and it's a private face group where we can continue the discussions. I can go ahead and hear from you. You can tell me what your grab and go bag looks like. What do you do on those long days? How do you take care of your time? And when we can go ahead and share those, that's just another support mechanism for you. And guess what? I can share with you sneak peek behind the scenes. I can go ahead and give you previews of upcoming podcast episodes, and you can give me some ideas and thoughts if you want me to go ahead and cover a topic as well. But YouTubers, thank you for watching me today and listening. And as always, if you have any comments, don't hesitate to go ahead and reach out or go ahead and comment below. But I appreciate you as a caregiver, and I hope that I'm providing you with some tips and tools and experiences that will help you have a better caregiver life and see the importance of filling your cup first. Bye for now.